Hi, I'm Chris Rosso, and this is a quick walkthrough of this unit in a box, diversity and recruiting for your unit. How to use this document. The idea here is to use it as a resource guide. It's not comprehensive, but it gives you the high-level ideas, and we can absolutely work with you to tailor it for your unit, to tailor what you need. Either reach out to me or any one of the staff on the exploring or council staff. You could use this as a meeting in a box, either with youth, or a unit committee, or the parents, whatever makes sense. You can use this as a presentation deck, or even use it as an outline to add your own stuff to, and we'll give it to you as a PowerPoint. You're welcome to add, subtract, and modify as it makes sense for you. Get inspired. Use this as a starting point, but keep going. Whatever you do, do something. Diversity is important. It's important in the BSA. It's important in our culture. Here's what we're going to cover. Why is diversity important? How do you overcome some of those challenges? How do you prepare for diversity? What are some effective recruiting strategies? How do you measure your progress? How do you gather and use your own stories? And then a quick conclusion. So, why is it important? Diversity in our units matters, right? We know that in the real world, it prepares youth for a diverse society. It fosters empathy and understanding. It enhances creativity and problem solving. This is really interesting. We know that in business, where a lot of this measurement has been done, teams that are more diverse perform higher. They do the job better, they do the job quicker, and they do the job more effectively. Ultimately, we know it's important to think beyond race, gender orientation, politics for diversity. Look at things like neurodiversity. Look at things like differing abilities. We know we get stronger through diversity, right? And, as I said, diverse teams in business and the military consistently outperform other teams. Think about things like cognitive diversity, diverse viewpoints. Always have somebody on your team that disagrees with you, right? That devil's advocate is always going to make you think. Skill diversity, there's lots out there. It's in your youth, it's in your parents, it's in your community. Cultural diversity. Think about cultural insights in your neighborhood. Think about cultural insights of your organization and who they serve. And we know that inclusion leads to higher morale and motivation for the youth. And that's what's most important. You got to identify your challenges. Recruiting youth is hard as it is. Recruiting diverse youth can be even harder. Think about your own unconscious biases. Find your own blind spots. And there's a link here to some great training on finding your blind spots and recognizing them. And there's a resource guide at the end of this deck with direct links to all this stuff. Think about lack of representation and strategies to attract unrepresented groups. Think about accessibility. Make sure that whatever you do is accessible to all your youth and adults, including your space. And think about your region and neighborhood. What are the strengths? What's the diversity of that area? Again, who do you serve? And how do you overcome some of those challenges? First, you got to be aware of your own biases. Not all biases are bad. We're not attaching value to that statement. For instance, people have a tendency to have a bias against touching hot objects because they know they'll get burned. That's a great awareness and a great bias to have. There's also some bad ones, and it's also important to be aware of those. Again, we're not attaching value. We're talking about awareness. Make sure you build psychological safety. It has to be safe for your youth and adults to have the conversation, to have the hard conversation, and frankly, to mess it up sometimes, to say the wrong thing, making sure that the environment in which they do it in is a safe place to test out those ideas, to understand each other, and to become more cohesive as a unit. Don't forget to use your resources. Beyond the training, use resources on diversity. The council has stuff for youth and adults. And ultimately, remember why we're here. We're here to serve the youth. Prepare for diversity. Unconscious bias, right? We talked about that. Address it and mitigate it. Get your youth and adults and parents trained. Accessibility. Make sure every event you do, every meeting you have is accessible to everyone with differing diversity and disabilities, both those seen disabilities and those unseen disabilities. Make sure you're partnering with parents and local organizations to further understand their needs and build accommodations. The slogan of the Boy Scouts of America is be prepared, but it's not just for Scouts. Let's talk about some effective recruiting strategies. Think about outreach programs, and we can help you build those. Collaborate with diverse communities you serve. Build a strong, inclusive, and accessible program. Think about inclusive topics. Every 3 to 6 months, one Explorer advisor told me they talk about this stuff in their unit, and that's important. Think beyond your current group, not just the diversity therein, but the diversity of your community. And think about inclusive messaging, communication that appeals to various backgrounds and people. Make sure you're collaborating, especially engaging the parents of your youth as partners in diversity efforts. Communicate the benefits and encourage involvement, right? Our parents bring us a treasure of diversity. They come from everywhere, they've done everything, and their stories matter. And collaborate with organizations. Collaborate with your chartered organization, but also other organizations in your community. Find out what they're doing, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. What are they doing well? What have they tried that didn't work out great? And again, use your resources, people, places, websites, etc. Create an inclusive environment. Is your environment safe? We talked about psychological safety. And of course, always consult the Guide to Safe Scouting if you have questions about creating safety, both physically and psychologically. And that's linked here and in the back of this presentation. Make sure you review your policies. Ensure organization policies reflect your diversity values, not only the diversity of your current group, but the diversity you seek to have and the diversity of your community. We use that word a lot. It's about serving the youth and serving our communities because that's where our youth live. And celebrate diversity. Don't sweep it under a rug. Host events that showcase various cultures, walks of life, backgrounds of the people in your units. Tracking and measurement is important. We can only get better when we measure something. Use feedback mechanisms. Collect input from members about their experiences from their parents. And consider doing this anonymously. Maybe do a Google form, with a survey on it or something like that, just so you can gather some real life, real information from your youth and adults. And, people who may not be comfortable coming to you and talking probably are comfortable with some sort of an anonymous way to communicate with you. Adopt and adapt strategies. Make changes based on that data and feedback. And then measure it again. This one's the most important slide. If you look at no other slide, look at this one. Gather stories and use them. The best stories of diversity, overcoming challenges, and great character are already in your unit. If you're hearing my voice or you've got this presentation, it's in you. You've overcome diversity in your life, especially as an adult or frankly as a youth, right? We face diversity every day. We face adversity every day. And it's important that we share our stories and use them to build our program. Your stories have power. They build your culture. They build connection. They build a team, and they get people watching out for each other's backs. Use the stories in your unit, your youth, your parents, your advisors, anyone involved. So in conclusion, we know diversity is important. We know we live in a different world than many of our adults grew up in. Even a few years ago, right? With the pandemic, with a new focus on diversity and inclusion, things have changed, and it's important that we change with them. Create a safe place to have that conversation and to do the work of diversity, recognizing that we're not always going to get it perfect, and we need to create that safe place to have those conversations and to have them again. Remember, when we get intentional, we can see the challenges that are in front of us and we can overcome them. And be optimistic for a more inclusive and diverse youth organization and a greater impact on our community as a result. When you acknowledge and actively overcome these challenges, there really isn't much you can't do. And don't forget to use your stories. More than anything, remember you're not alone. You've got other units in this district, you've got other units in this council, you've got the professional staff, you've got your volunteers, you've got the commissioner staff, all here to help you. Use that help. And make sure you're making yourself available to use your experience to help others. Finally, if you're hungry for more, here's a bunch of resources. Everything we've linked to in this document is here, and some resources that we didn't talk about, including some of the top volunteers and professionals available to you, both youth and adult, who you can reach out to for more information. Thanks for watching.